This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. KANAWHA Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosting an array of events from Civil War reenactments to diesel truck pulls. More information online at virginiarodeo.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. So what do you do? Information about getting involved in advanced technology careers, making everything from clean energy to life-saving medicine, is available at dreamitdoitvirginia.com. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a very special welcome to Delegate Steve Landes. We've looked forward to your being on This Week in Richmond and glad to catch you at a time here in September after an Appropriations Committee meeting. And you and some of your colleagues on that committee, it's great to catch you between sessions because it gets extremely busy. But appreciate your being on.
Well, thank you, David. I'm glad to be here. Glad to finally have the opportunity and get a chance to talk to you about all the things that we're dealing with in the interim and in ramping up towards the 2014 session.
Folks up in the Shenandoah Valley know you well. You've represented them now for 18 years and worked with some of their legislators for 6 years prior to that, but from Augusta County, representing part of Augusta, part of Rockingham, and part of Albemarle County. So from the Valley. And as we were talking when we were getting ready for the show, 18 years have flown by in the time that you've served.
They really have, and in fact, with this election, there are about 50% of the 100-member House have only served 4 or fewer years, and so I'm starting to feel like an old guy from the standpoint of my years of service, but it doesn't seem like I've been there that long in many ways.
You know, I was looking in the directory of candidates and checking and seeing that right now you're ranked as number 18 in seniority. Mm-hmm. But 7 of your colleagues that with more seniority are not running again. So even prior to the election or whatever, in a way, you're moving up to the 11th in seniority if all the ones above you are reelected and serve another term.
Right. And being 11 out of 100 is a daunting thought. Just in when I first came in 1996, after the election of 95, I was number 95.
95.
And at that point, we did it by alphabetical order. Now there's actual drawing, so you give everybody a chance to, get that whatever the lowest number is for that class. But I was number 95 out of 100, and with this reelection, assuming that somebody's not written in
right.
and has a chance to serve other than myself, but would be a number 11.
Well, I was looking through the directory. You're one of a significant number that doesn't have anybody else on the ballot with you. So your constituents are glad to have you back.
I hope so. And my predecessor, Pete Geeson, always said that there are 2 ways to run for office, and one is a competitive election, and the other is to have no opposition. He said having no opposition is always the better way to run, just from the standpoint of you don't have to just spend a lot of time and money from the standpoint of the reelection. But even having said that, you try to get out there and you talk to folks as much as possible. The challenge is making sure they know that you're on the ballot for election to really
yes.
let them know, because if you don't have competition. You're not in the news as much, and people just are not always aware.
Well, thinking about some subjects that you may want to talk about, let me tell our viewers that you serve on the Education Committee, in fact, Vice Chair of that committee, Appropriations Committee, Privileges and Election, and Rules Committee. So some major committee assignments. But legislation that you work on doesn't always fall within those committees. So thinking about, we're talking in September, our viewers will be seeing this in October before the election, and talk, if you will, about anything that's lingering from the last session or other matters that you see coming up in the 2014.
Well, as you know, David, we always have a full plate. The General Assembly, even though we're part-time, really for most of us, it is another job for most of us. And I work for a bank, Blue Ridge Bank in the Valley, and actually Charlottesville. We have an office there. But the good thing is we get a chance to work on things in the interim and get ready for the next session. But I would say what I'm hearing, one of the things we've done a good job, the McDonnell administration's done a great job on, and that is jobs, trying to provide job opportunities for folks, leveraging our higher education institutions and public education, and trying to make sure we have opportunities for young people, whether they're coming right out of high school and starting to work, or going on to college, or a two-year institution like a community college. And having those opportunities for people, I think, is still what I hear, that they want to make sure we're growing our economy and that we have economic growth. But we also have some other challenges. This recession that we've come out of, when you look at it from a budgetary standpoint, looking at the revenue numbers, and we just heard today a report, August numbers were down below what our expectations were, and one of those areas was the sales tax revenue that we get. For 2 months we've been below what the estimation was for that income coming into the state. That shows that the economy's still not rebounded completely. We're growing at about a 4 or 5% rate, where historically after a recession, Virginia grows at about 8%. So we still have some challenges related to that. One of the things I'm spending a lot of time on this summer is the Medication Innovation Reform Commission. We're looking at whether to expand or not, or what reforms to put in place for that, and that'll be a big issue budgetarily, I think, from a policy standpoint going into the next session. So there's been plenty to keep you busy over the summer and early fall.
And to make sure our viewers don't miss it, when you talk about sales tax revenue being down, revenues being down, and those estimates was what you based your budget on.
That's exactly right.
For this second year of the biennium. So unless that improved, it would have you in the position in January looking at what's called the caboose budget, that last part, perhaps having to do some adjustments.
It could very well, and you're exactly right. We have the outgoing budget that we have to deal with and make some adjustments for, and then we'll have the new biennial budget, as you know, that Governor McDonnell will introduce as he leaves, and the new governor will, be able to talk about it and maybe make some suggestions to the General Assembly about. But that's what will be in place. And the revenue estimates are important not only for that caboose bill, as you say, but going forward, that could be a trend or show a trend where sales tax or income tax, corporate income tax or non-withholding, or the folks that do their estimated tax payments, where all those sources are, and how well our economy does basically shows how well those revenue sources. We also have sequestration that we're trying to be aware of and prepared for. That's going to impact the Hampton Roads area as well as Northern Virginia. But even in Albemarle County, part of the district that I have, we're seeing some impact there, and even in the Shenandoah Valley with smaller defense contractors or establishments that do business with the Department of Defense.
So it has a ripple effect that doesn't just affect Northern Virginia or Hampton Roads. It's the Valley and other parts of the Commonwealth as well.
Very much so. At a lesser extent, obviously, but still has an impact.
Well, now, the incoming, you say, reminding our viewers, as you were, that the current governor proposes the budget and submits it, and then there will be an incoming governor who will suggest amendments to that. And then it comes to the Appropriations Committee and Senate Finance Committee where you continue to work on it.
We do, and of course the members of the House and Senate will be able to get a chance to make changes to the Governor McDonnell's suggested budget. The members of the committee obviously get the final say for the version that the House will produce. The Senate does the same thing on the Senate Finance Committee. And as you know, there are 12 of us. I keep my fingers crossed if the Speaker puts me on the Budget Conference Committee again, and I've been part of the 6 House members that have done that work. We basically get together with our Senate counterparts and put the final budget of the Commonwealth together based on not only the priorities the governor has put in place, but also the House and Senate. We try to come up with a compromise, if you will, of those budget priorities and balance the budget and make sure we do it in a fiscally responsible way. I'm very proud of the fact that we're not like Washington, that we do have a budget, it is balanced, and we get the job done.
Have never missed a time in having one.
Nope, we've always had a budget.
Have not done that. And one thing that has been going on now for quite a few years, didn't always happen, is that your committee, Appropriations, Senate Finance Committee, hold hearings usually in late December or early January before the session on the budget that's being introduced.
We do, and I know I've already sort of gotten a heads up that I believe there will be one in the Shenandoah Valley this year. Last year it was in Roanoke. We usually look at the western part of the state. I usually get assigned to that one because it's the closest one to where I live, but we usually have one in Northern Virginia, Central Virginia somewhere, usually in the Hampton Roads area at some point in time. But the House and Senate money committees, the Senate Finance, House Appropriations members will team up and be at locations all over the state for those public hearings. And that's where we get a chance to hear from the public, various groups or individuals, on what they think should be budget priorities for the next 2 years.
And those, of course, will be on the General Assembly calendar. People will be able to find out about those, even though we're talking in September, they're seeing this now in October, but those will be coming up before the end of the year.
They definitely will. And the best place to go, I always tell folks, is, the Virginia General Assembly website is very good, but the Appropriations Committee has a website. It's hac.virginia.gov, and that always has everything about our meetings posted, everything about the public hearings that we have, all the subcommittee meetings that occur during the General Assembly session, those agendas and when they meet, where they meet, all that is posted on there. And then all of our interim meetings, just like we had today, are posted there too.
So again, if people were getting that down, it's hac.virginia spelled out.
Correct.
.gov, G-O-V. Right. So that's an easy one for them to remember, for all of us to remember and to use. Education is something that you've worked on a great deal, and certainly as vice chair of the House Education Committee. One of the education issues that you all wrestled with, and 2 chambers came into agreement, the governor signed, is one that's gotten a little bit of news recently, and School Boards Association has had some concerns. And tell our viewers something about that legislation, why it makes good sense that it is that on the books.
Well, you're probably referring to the mechanism to help those schools that are failing in the state.
Yes.
I did actually not vote for that legislation because of some of the reasons that have come forward. One, first of all, I believe that there needs to be a mechanism at the state level to help schools that are having a difficult time, that are not meeting expectations, and more importantly, the students are not doing well on SOLs, and they're just not meeting the accreditation standards that we all expect for all of our public schools. I thought a mechanism within the Board of Education would have been more appropriate, but again, the governor came up with a new institute or a new mechanism that'd be separate, but within state government to basically do that. It has legislators on it, some administrators, And obviously the school board in Norfolk and other places has not been enamored with that idea, and they're taking and challenging that in court. The School Boards Association is as well. I think in the end result, no matter what happens with that case, we do need a mechanism to work with those schools that are having problems. Again, I think a better model would be through the Board of Education, which is established and could take over those schools, so to speak. And, you know, we have an independent organization, statewide organization already through the Virginia School for the Deaf and Blind. So we do have mechanisms at the state level that have been set up by the General Assembly to do that. So it'll be interesting to see the constitutional, how those questions are addressed. I did have some concerns myself about that. But in the end result, we do need to have a mechanism, and that is there to help basically those school systems that are having difficulty. And if the school board is not able to do that locally, then somebody's got to step in and really help those systems and those, more importantly, those students and those parents achieve what everybody hopes for their children, that is to get a good education and to get a diploma.
Well, so unless this matter is upheld in court, it may be that your idea and some of your colleagues to do it within the Board of Education might be the alternative way to go.
And I think depending on what the outcome of the court case is, you'll see some legislation probably to come back and tweak what I think is a good concept. I just don't think the governing mechanism made sense. I also had a little bit of a concern because we were creating another level of government. And I can tell you in education, part of the problem in my estimation is we have too many levels of government. We need to try to streamline that. We've got locally elected school boards. We've got a Board of Education at the state level. The governor has obviously input. The General Assembly confirms those people at the state level. And I think it makes sense to utilize those mechanisms that we already have to address that problem, which is significant. And I have to commend the governor for taking on that tough issue, because something needs to be done. There's no doubt about that.
I know there's just a limited number of schools that seem to fall in that area, but in the reconvened session back a few months ago, there was some move to expand it, and I think in your chamber, the House of Delegates, you all didn't want to put more money into that and to get yet another tier of schools that might have been impacted.
Well, the governor had asked for a fairly significant amount of money for this new institution to really look at and work on those school systems. I think the compromise we came up with in budget conference was about $150,000. That's not a lot of money when you look at the challenges that they're going to be facing. Right. And we need to deal with those schools now that are having that problem we've already identified before we expand it any further. And more importantly, it hadn't been up and running yet. I'm a firm believer that you try a policy, you make sure it's working, and then if it makes sense to expand and include, in this case, additional schools, then that's something we can look at. But it just didn't make sense to do it right now.
What, any other education issues that you'd want to tell our viewers about?
One of the things, David, I've been working on, I think we're going to see some results. I worked with the governor on legislation this year to basically look at a SOL waiver for school systems that are not meeting reading at grade 3, that level. There's about 36 of them around the state. They'd be able to request and seek a waiver so that they would still have to meet the requirements, but they'd have a little bit more flexibility. They would also get, through the budget, additional reading specialists to go into those school systems, really help those students get up to their grade level reading where they should be. All studies show that if students are not reading at grade 3 at that level, then they're not going to be successful later on, whether it's elementary school, middle school, or high school. So we've got to start working and directing more assistance to those folks at that level. The year before, we also worked with the governor on expanding the reading program in the state to really beef that up across the board for all students. And I'm very happy to have been involved with that. Really commend the governor for looking at a problem where we know it has definite results if we can get to those kids early, provide that assistance, especially in those 36 schools that are really having challenges. And when I look at even the school systems in the area I represent, none of them really qualify. But more importantly, we ought to be looking at the policies to help all those schools, because just because someone may not be receiving assistance in the district I represent, that means they're doing well. that means they're succeeding and the school systems are doing well. But we need to help those other schools, really reach that level, and more importantly, again, those students to be at that third grade reading level and achieving where they need to have the reading comprehension for that.
When we look at the 4 committees you're serving on, 4 important committees: rules, privileges, and elections, and then, as we said before, education, appropriations. 2 of the 4 of them have chairmen not coming back. So not just folks in the Valley, but around the Commonwealth, we're looking to see what the Speaker does to fill those positions. And as our viewers hopefully all know, if not, we'll remind them that the Speaker appoints people to committees, and the Speaker names the chair and the vice chair committees. So you're certainly in some ranking positions on 2 major committees.
Well, because of the Speaker's appointments in the past, both Speaker Howell and then also Speaker Wilkins, I am going to be the 1, 2, or 3rd person of seniority on pretty much the committees I serve on now, and that is it is interesting that appropriations and education are losing their chairman. 2 great chairmen, Coach Tata, the House Education Committee. I've been very fortunate to serve with him as his vice chairman, and of course Lacey Putney, who has served longer than any other member of the House, who's the great chairman of our Appropriations Committee. I know my friend Chris Jones and I have gotten lots of speculation from folks about appropriations. The same is true for education. We'll wait and see where the Speaker comes down on that. I know, as I've told a lot of folks, Chris and I have talked about this as well, we just know one thing: there's a good likelihood that we're going to be a chairman. We just don't know chairman of what. And so I look forward to that potential opportunity. And as you say, the Speaker of the House, Bill Howell, is going to make that decision, and I'm confident he'll do what's best for Virginia and what's best for the committee. So I'll look forward to that.
We shall see. We shall see. We were talking before we started the program that you've been one of the legislators, and the number's increasing, who really uses social media. And I'm sure that people in your legislative district and other people who follow your postings find that to be very helpful, and as you were saying, humanizing too.
Well, it's interesting. Before I really got on Facebook, I wasn't convinced that's something I needed to do. But I had a couple interns who showed me and said, "You really need to get on there. It's really good. It's really something that engages you with the public and folks not only in your district, but as you say, around the state." What I've found is more people than not realize that legislators have lives just like every other person, every other family that they know. And what I try to do is basically just tell folks what I'm doing through the week, whether it's at work or the legislature, or when it's going to a baseball game with my son, who's a Little League baseball kid, an all-star. I have to give him kudos. He was in All-Stars this year.
Yes.
He's running cross-country now, so that's a new experience for our family. And so it really does humanize, I think, elected officials. And more importantly, it lets us see what other people are doing. Could be just an average constituent, or I keep up with you on Facebook. I know what you're doing. I know who's on your show a lot of times, based on the posting there. So it's a good way to keep up with what's going on in general. And as Rob Bell, my friend Rob Bell, said just recently to me, he said, we've all become journalists because we're talking about news and posting about what's going on. So. To be able to, as you do so often, post even the agenda or for a meeting of Appropriations Committee, so people can see that without going on that website that you gave them before, if they're following you. Yeah, exactly. You can make connections, and we do that to our own websites as well to make sure people know what we're doing and what's going on. But it is a really unique and good way to keep up with what's happening in state government, more importantly, what's happening with other folks in our communities. In our closing minute or so, the time has flown by. There's something that you maybe thought I was going to ask you and I've failed to ask you. So what else would you like to tell our viewers? Well, I think we've talked about a lot of things. I mean, one of the things I think I get a lot of questions about is what's going on with this gubernatorial election. And I think hopefully you're going to have the candidates on your show, and then folks will get a chance to see them. It's going to be interesting. I think the Attorney General has a lot of experience that people know about. Mr. McAuliffe obviously has experience and is touting that as well. So it'll be interesting to see who we're going to be working with during the next General Assembly session. And whoever the voters decide to put in office, I've served with 5 governors now. This will be the 6th. And we will do our best to work on those things we agree with, but we'll disagree where we disagree. But more importantly, the legislative branch is there to be a check on the executive branch. It's our job to do that. So hopefully people will keep that in consideration as we go through the next 4 years as well.
Equal branch of government.
We are.
Equal branch. Delegate Steve Landes, thank you so much for being on This Week in Richmond, and we look forward later, as we call you Mr. Chairman, having you back on again.
Be glad to do it, David. Thank you again for having me on.
Thank you.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. KANAWHA Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosting an array of events from Civil War reenactments to diesel truck pulls. More information online at virginiarodeo.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. So what do you do? Information about getting involved in advanced technology careers, making everything from clean energy to life-saving medicine, is available at dreamit.doitvirginia.com. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.